Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's episode of Trending. As always, today's show is brought to you by Red Life Therapy. For healing at a cellular level, head over to redlifedevices.com and use the code Ickonic for 10% off all red light devices. There is a free webinar explaining how all this technology works. It's coming in the next few days, and the link to it is in the description. I'm joined by Richard Willett. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thank you. It's good to be back this week. My first show of the week.
Welcome back to the Madhouse, Richard. What's your first story today?
Talk about Madhouse. Donald Trump, and I'm sorry to go straight in on Trump, as you do, but he's everywhere, isn't he? So we're going to have a couple of stories about Trump today. This is the news. This was actually quite disturbing to me, the way I saw it. The first time I've actually looked at the guy and thought, he's not stupid, he's a psychopath. He was asked about, obviously, the ceasefire in Gaza. So the question was, how confident are you that you can keep the ceasefire in Gaza and conclude the 3 phases of the deal? I mean, this is 3 days old. And Trump says, he replies, I'm not confident. That's not our war. What, the one you've been funding? It's their war. But I'm not confident. Gaza is like a massive demolition site. It's really got to be rebuilt in a different way. And it's the cold response from this man, and I call him a man in loose terms, to it. And it's the way he's saying, have you seen it? Like, there's nowhere to live. That would make a really nice beachfront, basically. And it's just disgusting. And so the second question was, do you plan to rebuild Gaza? Like he's the king of the world, like he's an emperor. Trump, I might, What do you mean I might? Like he's going to go and do it. Gaza's interesting. It's a phenomenal location on the sea, the best weather, like he's selling it, in a brochure. Everything's good. It's like some beautiful things could be done with it. What, like a new Jerusalem? Some fantastic things could be done with Gaza. I find the guy usually quite funny, and he's just an idiot. But this is the way he speaks about it. I don't think you're going to get the Donald Trump who's just a bit of an idiot anymore. You're going to get this cold, calculated, I'm not going to be in again, this is my second term. Psychopath. That is psychopathic to talk about this way when you've got thousands, tens of thousands of people going back to find their homes and their children's bodies there. I mean, this guy is an absolute disgrace. And to add to that, 9 months ago, I mean, we knew about this, but just to add weight to the longevity of their plan, Jared Kushner says Gaza's waterfront property could be very valuable. Donald Trump's son-in-law, who's a Chabadnik, also says Israel should bulldoze an area of the Negev desert and move Palestinians there. This is a long-term agenda, as we know, as we point out. This goes back probably thousands of years, but the cold, calculated way, Gaz, that he actually answers that question is another side to this quite clearly sick man that now is heading up this genocidal, messianic madness. And he's only a couple of days in.
Well, it's ethnic cleansing, Richard. If it was anywhere else in the world, you'd be allowed to say that, but obviously you get told off for saying it. But that's exactly what it is. They want the Palestinians out. Full stop. Now, that was something that we were talking about last week when they were talking about the ceasefire. It's like, yeah, okay, but what are the terms? It's not a case of go on and back you go, back to your home. What home? There isn't a home. Now, of course, what they want is they want the land. They want it as part of the Greater Israel Project. And even before the Greater Israel Project, they've always wanted that land. They believe it belongs to them. So Kushner's comments about it being a great waterfront location, he's right. But it's not a waterfront location for Palestinians. That's the point. Another thing to add to that, which I find interesting, is the fact that Trump has put a guy called Stephen Witkoff. He's given him the role of special envoy to the Middle East. Now Stephen Witkoff's MO is real estate development. That's where he made his money. That's what he does. So at the end of the day, you're talking about an area of land needing to be rebuilt, and then you put a guy in charge, essentially, of being this envoy to the Middle East, whose whole modus operandi is buying up land and redeveloping it and selling it on at a great profit. Now, when Trump says, I think that there could be something great done with this land, what he means is he wants Israel to rebuild it. That's the reading between the lines there. Israel will rebuild Gaza with American taxpayer money, and it will be part of Israel. Simple as that. Now, if they can't get that over the line this time, if they don't manage to move the Palestinians out, now I imagine a lot of Palestinians will leave of their own accord. A lot won't, because they are tied to that land, but a lot will for the reason that, what are they going back to? There's nothing to go back to. They've lost huge numbers of their family members, their children. There's no house there. There's no work there. There's no food there. There's no nothing there. So how are you going to survive? Then what will happen is European and Western NGOs will step in and will orchestrate them moving into Europe, which again will start to tick a box for another part of the agenda. And so then you're left with this land with just a few people on it. Now, if those people refuse to leave, if they refuse to go into this desert or into the Negev or wherever, past Rafah, wherever Kushner wants to move these people, as if he's God, then what you'll find, Rich, as you always do, is another rocket will fire from Gaza, or someone else will get kidnapped from Israel, or something. Something will happen that will cause Israel and Netanyahu, the absolute nutcase that is Netanyahu, to go, right, that's it, ceasefire's over, we're going back in to finish the job. They talk about this 3-phase plan. At the end of the day, the end of the plan, the final goal, the final exclamation mark is that Israel has the West Bank and Israel has Gaza. Period. Anything else is do you know what I mean? It's just political jargon. It's not real. That's what they want, mate. And we know that. Yeah, they've not lied about it. They've been honest.
Well, they have been honest about their deceit, which is the oxymoron there, and it's the tripartite. Everything comes in threes. The 3 world wars, 3-phase plan, the Trinity. They always talk about it. Build back better. All of this stuff. They have a code, and not code of ethics, unfortunately. And it's very rare you see me getting annoyed about things, but the coldness of what Trump came up with. If you are following this man and supporting this man, there's something wrong in your heart, and you need to go and have a look, because he blatantly disregarded the thousands of children, women and men who were dying for the last year and a half in front of us, and said, it'd be nice to put a hotel there. It's just
people
insane.
In these positions don't care, Rich. That's the thing, and we've spoke about it so many times, that people have the problem they have in their head is that they think a certain way, and they think that everyone else thinks a certain way. So you go, that person is doing that, and they go, no, they wouldn't do that. No, you wouldn't do that. Anyone in this position, anyone that's allowed to get to that position within this corrupt political system is there for a reason, and it's not a good one.
And you wouldn't be allowed to do that anyway, because you would be in prison, like in a normal, just world, unless you're Netanyahu, and that gets scrapped. So there's something needs to be done about this lot, because it very rarely annoys me as much as seeing that orange man coldly disregard children with hands blown off.
None of these people care. Another person that doesn't care is Chairman Starmer. So I don't know if you saw this yesterday, Rich. Obviously, the whole story's coming out now about the Southport killer. What's his name again? I'll try and say his second name. It's Exel Rudakabana. Very easy to say. It's Welsh names. I struggle with them. He's obviously pleaded guilty to killing these 3 children in Southport. Now, there's a lot more to it. There's a hell of a lot more to it, and I think a lot more will come out further down the line. But what is coming out is the fact that he was reported to Prevent, an organisation which is supposed to be anti-terror, 3 times, 3 separate occasions for his obsession with violence. Even his father was getting involved in stopping him going and attacking people at his former school just in the days before he went and killed these children. Prevent didn't think it was anything to worry about, which is very interesting actually, because Prevent thought that my dad talking at a theatre in Leicester in 2018 was a problem, a big enough problem to have their police affiliate go and talk to the venue and have them cancel it. And obviously my dad's banned from Europe on anti-terror laws, but obviously this Axel guy is fine, don't worry about it, not a problem. So when Starmer was giving this press conference yesterday, obviously he's trying to come out a little bit more kind of puff his chest out and come out a little bit more confident, because he's kind of, he is under the cosh essentially. What was he hiding from the public? And what I found very interesting was he's talking about this expansion of anti-terror laws. Imagine my shock. But what he says is, he said that actually there's another kind of terrorism now that's emerging, new terrorism that's emerging right on time. Not like your usual groups, your organized groups like Al-Qaeda, which I find hilarious, because the Labour government was funding Al-Qaeda and their affiliates about 15 minutes ago in Syria. So are they a terror group or not, Chairman Starmer? But what he describes this new emerging terrorism as people on their own, loners, misfits and stuff like that. But what he then says, he says they're accessing all manner of material online. Now, as soon as he mentions material online, you go, okay, I get what he's saying now. Because let's have it right. We all know that anti-terror laws are not there to stop terrorists. They're not. They never have been. What these people do is they use certain things. So with the Southport killings, now that situation, depending on what comes out about it and what the actual facts are, it was either orchestrated, allowed to happen, that's what my money's on, or they've just simply taken advantage of it and gone, okay, this has happened. Because just think about it. Who did they go for in the immediate aftermath of the Southport stabbing? They went for the far right. Now, everyone's far right now. It doesn't mean anything. They went for them. They went for the people that were outraged about what happened. Now, to me, your priorities are slightly off there, Sunshine, but that was what the focus was on. This is the threat of the far right. Now, when you then had these riots, as much as I think the media kind of over-egged them a little bit and made out that they were a hell of a lot bigger than they were, you had then immigrant communities and Muslim groups being gaslit by the likes of Hope Not Hate, who were tweeting about the fact that a Muslim woman had acid thrown in her face by a far-right protester, which never happened. Nothing happened to Hope Not Hate and Nick Lowles. Nothing happened to him in terms of misinformation. That's interesting, isn't it? But that obviously incensed these immigrant communities and Muslim groups, as it would. So then they took to the street. They were fighting with police and all that kind of stuff. But you never saw the government and Starmer vilifying immigrant communities. Far from it. It was all about the natives, for want of a better phrase. It was all about them. They were the problem. And throughout this whole thing, it's all been about the far right. It's all that the BBC, which is obviously just a state propaganda outlet, has been going on about. And even in the days leading up to this trial, they put out a documentary on the far right. It's all about the far right, all this focus. So I'm looking at this and I'm going, right, okay, so Chairman Starmer's government is focused on the far right. That's the obsession. He's bringing anti-terror laws, but he's definitely not bringing them in to shut you up. Well, of course he is. That's the whole point of it. The online harms bill, they want that over the line. And so what they're going to use is they're going to use the death of children, a grieving community, an angry community, a scared community. They're going to use that to try and get things like the online harms bill over the line. And they say it's for your benefit. We're protecting you. Well, you didn't protect the kids in Southport. You didn't protect them because you don't care. And there's another story we're going to come to at the end, which just underlines the fact the political class, the parasite class, don't care about you and me. They don't care. So if Starmer stood there saying we're going to bring in these laws to protect you, all you are 100% certain of from that statement is those laws are not there to protect you.
Absolutely, and we hear a lot about two-tier policing, and it's of my kind of and we've discussed this before, that it's more three-tier policing. Really, I think that's a more accurate way of putting it, because there's a policing for the two common man. So in this case, you would have the Muslims and the British pitted against each other, as we've said before, in the Leviathan versus the Behemoth mutually destructive war. It's a level of two-tier policing there, and it depends on what narrative these elites, and I hate using that word, these scumbags want. But there's a third tier, and it's their policing. As I mentioned earlier, Netanyahu gets away with this stuff. Me and you would be in prison, although you wouldn't be able to live with yourself anyway. So there's a three-tier policing. There's their level of policing, which is, and we know that the likes of the Brotherhood, the Freemasons, and that is just completely awash in the judicial system. It's exactly what it is, and it's even their the jury goes through the second bar, and I think it's the third bar, or the first and second, that go through Temple Mount, the Round Temple in London. So there is a 3-tier policing there. There's their world they live in, and then there's a world where they can clash us lot together. And that's what we've seen in the Middle East. That's what we see everywhere. It's the same play over and over again. And as you say, your dad says problem, reaction, solution, Hegelian dialect. It's the same thing. So what we're seeing there is many different aspects being ticked off. And I think, something to come to terms with is that they can use anything to weaponize their agenda. So we need to know where it's heading and why. And then you can see they can weaponize any situation like a game of chess. They can move in any direction they want because they're making up the rules. You're playing on their board, and it's a level that looks down upon the people that basically pay their wages and keep them where they are. This is the inversion of the whole system. So they're literally there, obviously using a horrific situation to pit the far right English, ridiculous, obviously, against, or British against the Muslims, and we know that's a mutually destructive war. But at the very same time, there's another tier of policing, and that's the ones that above the higher levels of these secret societies, and they won't touch these guys because they're all in it together, and all their businesses rely upon this. And most of the judges that go through this Round Templar Temple in London are part of it. So the whole thing is corrupt from the top, being held up by us guys at the bottom through our hard work and graft. We graft for their craft, and that's the way it is. And it doesn't have to be. It's upside down. So I mean, being pitted against each other is a real important thing, because their worst nightmare is that the Muslims and the British would come together and go, this is horrific, this sort of behaviour is just evil, regardless of whatever faith and belief system you have. That's their worst nightmare.
Oh, completely. That's why and I always harp on about it, that's why they absolutely despised the mass protests in London over COVID, because they tried to, in the beginning, paint them as far right, tinfoil hat, conspiracy theorists, anti-vaxxers. And then, when it was getting up into the hundreds of thousands and you were walking alongside, people with hijabs and people with rainbow flags and stuff, they couldn't do that anymore. It was everyone coming together of all creeds and colours and sexualities and income brackets and whatever. I remember walking down Oxford Street with millionaires. Do you know what I mean? It was like, it didn't matter. We were all in this together. And that the establishment, you're absolutely right, it terrifies them. So what they're trying to do is they try and create division, which they're doing across the board. People like Nick Lowles, he knows what he's doing when he's tweeting out about acid attacks that never happened. He knows exactly what he's doing. Bearing in mind, it was Hope Not Hate that spotted a fascist flag at a Trafalgar Square rally that was right at the back when the stage was that way. So no one, if I'm watching people speak, I'm watching people speak. I'm not turning around going, I wonder if there's an idiot unfurling a fascist flag. One guy unfurled a fascist flag for about 5 minutes, rolled it back off, and then went home. And that just happened to be when a guy from Hope Not Hate was walking through Trafalgar Square. Didn't realise there was a protest on. I was just walking, took a picture of it, and it made all the papers. I don't believe you.
No.
But what I also don't believe is the level of gaslighting is extraordinary, because the reason that people are defending Starmer in terms of what he spoke about and what was hidden about this Southport killer, they're basically saying that they weren't talking about his ethnicity and things like this because they thought it would prejudice the trial, basically. So they didn't talk about it. They kept it hush hush because that's how it is. That's how it needs to be, right? Okay, he deserves a fair trial, and you go, okay. As much as I can't abide the scumbag, and if you look at the photos of him, mate, the engine's going, but there's no one behind the wheel. You look at those eyes, mate; they are dark and sinister. But okay, fair trial, right? Everyone needs to get a fair trial, fine, right? Well, when you had the rioters and the people that were saying stuff online afterwards, they didn't get a fair trial. You came out and completely demolished them as racist, far-right, Islamophobic thugs, neo-Nazis, white supremacists. All these things were said about these groups of people before they went on trial. Did that not Did that not have an effect on the judgment then? Did that not create a bias against them from the judges? Well, it's one rule for thee, one rule for me. But another thing I saw, just finally, Rich, on this story, which I think is very interesting. Actually, Dominic Cummings tweeted about it this morning. I'm finding myself agreeing with Dominic Cummings on times, former advisor to Boris Johnson. Mate, left is right, up is down. Right, I'm agreeing with Dominic Cummings. But he made a very valid point.
It's becomings of you, isn't it? It's becomings of you.
It is becoming of me. Yeah, he was commenting on the front page of The Sun this morning. Now, they've coined the phrase the Amazon killer, right? And they've made this whole story about the fact that he bought this knife on Amazon, and that's what he... No. The knife didn't kill people. He did. Because I've got plenty of knives in my house, Rich. I use it to make me dinner. I've never plunged it in anyone because I'm not a psychopath. It's not about the knife, mate. He's as if he's a complete psychopath, this kid, right? He wants to go and murder some innocent people. He goes online. I won't let me buy the knife. Oh, never mind. I'll watch Bargain Hunt instead. That's not how this works. He would have found a way to do it because that's what psychopaths do, right? So it's not about Amazon. But then I'll go, okay, well, there's gaslighting there. It's like I'm blaming Amazon. I'm not blaming the people that should have prevented him from doing it. Like the organisation Prevent, as I mentioned earlier, they can stop a man in his late 60s talking on a stage about peace and love and how we're all one consciousness, but they can't stop a murderer. That's weird. Priorities. But then I think, well, actually, then you're going for what people can purchase, because Amazon don't just sell knives. They sell books, and they sell ebooks, and they sell audio books. All of things that are anti-establishment, against the state, against the status quo, that then you tie, blaming what the person can get hold of with the introduction of new anti-terror legislations, the expansion of anti-terror legislation, using the quote, accessing all manner of material online. And you start to put those together and you start to read between the lines and you think, oh, okay, you're going to use this tragedy to try and silence people and stop what people can access in terms of information that will expose you and your parasite class.
Well, again, they'll use everything. But I think another point of that is this is where they could, and I would assume that they are going to tie this into the digital ID. So they'll be tracking everything you purchase. And then you'll be going, oh, better not buy that, because it might seem like if I bought, a hairdryer that I blew someone out of the window on purpose in 1984. It's basically, I don't know why I choose that year. It is apt, yeah. And so they would be tracking what you're purchasing. So it's this whole view of them watching everything you're doing with the digital ID. It comes to the point where you are just an automaton because you are just second guessing everything you're doing. So the whole Amazon killer is ridiculous. QD killer would have sounded better anyway, and it's cheaper. But it's the fact that they're going to be tracing what you're buying.
Yeah,
tracking
it's
everything
the problem
you're buying.
reaction
It's
solution.
profile building. It
Like
is
you
exactly
said,
what it is.
You think who is desperate to bring in digital IDs and was desperate to bring in digital IDs from 1997 when he became Prime Minister? Tony Blair. Who opened the frickin' borders to allow unvetted, unfiltered mass immigration into the United Kingdom? Tony Blair. Because one creates the other. You create such a situation where they come at you and they go, do you know what? There are people in this country illegally. We don't know who they are. They're a threat to you. They're a threat to your children. Do you know what would help? If we had digital ID, then we could know who everyone was and where they were going. And people will go, yeah, that's a great idea because it will keep us safe. Whole thing was completely coordinated from the beginning. Right. Rich, your next story, again, it's about banning, what you can say, what you can access, what you can think, and punishable by prison time.
This is absurd. This is from the Times of Israel. But again, we've had this with Donald Trump talking about anything you say against Israel is anti-Semitic in the universities, like he's, again, the god of all speech. The Knesset passes law mandating 5 years in jail for denial of October the 7th massacre. Now, what level is that denial? I mean, obviously, that's very, very vague. You can say that, yes, it happened. A massacre did happen. And I'm not denying a massacre happened, but I am questioning who was behind it and how it came about. Is that denying that it's happened? You can look at the Holocaust to say, oh, Holocaust denier. You're not denying that it happened, but you're questioning some of the elements of the narrative. It's not the same thing. And even if you did deny it, it's still your bloody reason to deny it. I mean, it's up to you to decide. Modelled after the 1986 law banning Holocaust denial, like you're a child. legalization requires 5-year prison term for denying the atrocities with the intention of defending or identifying with Hamas. Well, not that long ago, Netanyahu was telling them that they need to be about to give them a reason to not have a Palestinian state. So maybe you want to go after him first. A law criminalizing the denial, minimization, or celebration of the Hamas terrorist group's October 7 attack on southern Israel passed its third and final reading, 16-0, in the Knesset plenum on Tuesday, obviously. 16-0. I mean, you would say, I think there might be a fix in here, wouldn't you? If that was a football game, you would be going, I don't think the goalkeeper cares. I'm getting a feeling because he's been sitting at the back of the net eating his sandwiches for the second half. It's just ridiculous. So the legalization sponsored by Yisrael buy-in to MKOD for is modelled after a 1986 law prohibiting Holocaust denial. Anyone who says or writes things denying the